To understand an API, you see yourself as a customer and you look for a waiter. I don't mean, you can consider yourself as a waiter. So let's start with this. What is an API? I'll be very honest, when I started this, I was a bit confused because I was very new to APIs. I mean, to the extent of my knowledge then, all I need to do was, just match things together. But using an API was a different thing. So to explain to you the same way I do understand now, this was the best way I could come up with, which is you could consider yourself as a customer. Okay, let's say you go to a restaurant now, you need to get a food, right? So you need an order. So you ask for a plate of rice, right? The thing is, when you get to a restaurant like that, you don't go directly to the kitchen. You don't have direct access to the kitchen. And we can consider the kitchen as the server, while you can be considered as make.com or probably a browser or maybe a mobile app. So you cannot have direct access to the server. You can't just, pop into the kitchen and, ask them for, just give me a plate of rice or something. No, you can't do that. So you don't have direct access basically, but there's a way around it. And that is what? Through an API. So an API is this guy here is a waiter. And what this guy does is he gives you a menu. The menu is your API documentation. And you get to look at the menu and you say, okay, this is what you want to get. These are the things you want to, you like to order. And you tell this person, which is the API tells the kitchen, he only has access to the kitchen, tells the kitchen returns it back to me after preparing it, returns it back. Next, they give you exactly what you've been looking for. I mean, that's the best example I could just think of, basically. So you could see this as your server or your database, and you could see this as make.com or your browser or your mobile app or any other thing I can think of. So here is what we talk about today. Well, talking about API, we want to understand what API does. We want to understand how to interact with an API. And yeah, that's just basically what I want to talk about. So this is layer 3, and we're starting layer 3 on a very open note. And that is the fact that we understand that we've gone through layer 1, layer 2. Layer 1 was about prompt engineering and context engineering, just everything regarding prompt, typing, natural language, right? So that was what we were dealing with. When we got to layer 2, I remember it was a very huge, turn for us, because we're moving from a place where we're using AI and we're taking AI, chatting with AI, to having to do something that looked technical, like, that should be a developer that does this. But to be very honest, you don't need to be a developer. You don't need to have a developer experience. You can just start with that. So anyway, we started layer 2 from day 11 to day 25, basically. And we had to break down every single thing about AI automation. We did a lot of projects. We did about 7 projects. And we did a bunch of connections and many things. Very interesting. So I'm saying all this in case you've not watched that, or in case you just came across this. And I just know that we are still on our 60-day series, which is talking about the 5 layers of AI. And yeah, this is everything we've been doing. So this is layer 3. And layer 3 is more about the door. I mentioned this yesterday, that layer 3 is how you do more without having access to the inbuilt app on make.com. And just things, you just try to start thinking like a developer this time around. You start thinking like someone who interacts with codes, though you're not going to interact with any code. And I'm going to explain every single thing. It will be very understandable, because once again, we're using our resource guide. So, I mean, every single thing is what I've put here. I've added it here for you to, just get across this easily. So, and the first thing I'm going to introduce you to is APIs, which I just explained. And basically, to connect all the dots is what I've been doing all this while. So make.com needs to send, which is our customer now. Make.com needs to send a message, right? Or make.com needs to buy something. You need to request for something. And make.com, we just have to tell, a waiter, which is an API. That API is a connection between what? The software or the service or whichever server or database that we need something from back to us. A very easy example I could use here is what we've been using all this while, what we've been building, and that is, let me just open this up. That is when we're dealing with our digital receptionist, right? So a simple example I can explain of how an API is, so to just show you guys how an API is via this. I mean, I could have used a webhook, but let's use this. This is a very simple example. What we had in that's Notion, right? So if you remember, we had, okay, I don't know why my screen is like this, but we had to make a connection of some sort. You click on this connection type, internal, you have to put in some token or something. This is quite big. I might have to reload this. So, I mean, that's just everything about, that's how an API also feels. So layer 3 that we're talking about now just teaches us how to, make connections, how to make calls without having a module like this. So you could connect with a service, you connect with Notion without actually having a Notion module. Or for example, you could actually connect with Google Forms without having this module in the first place. Something like that. I've not even bothered actually trying that, but there should be a way around that, right? So what is an API? An API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's a set of rules that define what requests you are allowed to ask, meaning even though you are a customer, there is a limit to what you can ask for. Like, for example, you're in a restaurant. Let's keep on using that. You're in a restaurant and you get there. Let's say you are, okay, so I don't know if the people here are actually entirely Nigerian or from other countries, but there is a famous jollof rice here, which most restaurants actually sell it. Most, when I say most, those are not specific. So, probably a particular brand, because you can have some restaurants that are Chinese restaurant, or they like bringing culture from somewhere else, which is great. But most restaurants or local restaurants here, sell jollof rice, right? And you could ask them for jollof rice. But if you go to these restaurants and you ask them for a Chinese rice, you notice that they don't have it. Because, I mean, it's very clear that is not what they can do, or they can't provide that. So you need to know that the same thing works here. If you ask an API, which is your waiter now, that is there a Chinese rice, the waiter will tell you to check the menu. Does it look like, there's a Chinese rice? No, there isn't. So that's the first one. The second one is how to format those requests. There are specific structures where you have to give, like the way you ask for this. You cannot ask, still on the example of the restaurant, you can't ask the waiter, put your leg crossed somewhere and you're commanding, you're just using one method and you think it works for everywhere. You can have your legs cross-legged on a table and, ask for food, but you can't do that in a restaurant, right? There has to be a structure. There has to be a way you do it. While the third one is what responses look like and, what data format you receive. There's a way, it's more like the output, how the output. So what I mean here now is that, still using the restaurant analogy, right? Once they serve you this food, there's a way it has to look like. There's a format it looks like that looks presentable, right? That you get to understand it. This is basically the response. So an API is just more like a standardized way for one piece of software to talk to another software without either knowing how the other works internally. That means while your API you, the customer, can ask the API a bunch of things and it, reaches out to the server. What is going on here is that you cannot have access to the server. You don't have access to the database. You can't understand what is going on inside there. But the API will just give you in the format it has been programmed to give you, basically. So that is how it is. So just to expand more on that, you are the customer, and that is you here. That is you here. I'd like the customer data, please. That means, I'd like my favorite order, please. And yeah, you can be make.com browser, your browser. I mean this, when I say your browser, I mean this. So, and you could be your mobile app, just anything. So just a way to interact with another software, right? The menu is an API documentation. We're going to explain more on that. While the waiter is, the API itself is the one right in between, checking, what you placed and requesting it from the server. So the server now is the database, which is the kitchen. why I used this, for example, or as an example the other time. Okay, I think I do have this though. Why I used this, and I was trying to explain using a Notion, though it gave us something very bad. It was too big. It's too big. So let's go back here. I think this is better. So where we have this, now why I use this as an example is that I believe that we've been familiar with using databases. So you guys understand that for you to request something from this database, whatever the connection is, you needed this API to ask. But aside from whatever response we're giving this, it's not going to know any other thing that is going on in my Notion account. It doesn't understand anything that is going on. So you guys just get to understand what is going on there now. It doesn't understand. So the food order in this case is the API request. That is what you asked for. The mail you receive is the response. And we don't serve that is where you see errors come up. An example, 404, not found, or bad requests. Now, this is an example of an error. I was telling you guys, I think this was day 24, when I was explaining about the different types of errors. So I added a little bit there, where I believe that I had to go deeper. And there's a bunch of, status codes here. We call it status codes, and you can see them here, but we are definitely going there. So it returns, something like that and tell you, no, it's not found, or, we don't serve that or something. An example of that real quick, let me use I believe Tally. So Tally has this, right? Yeah, let's use this. /r/ in 6842. You know what? Let's just use TR. Yes. Guess what? But it doesn't return someone else's phone. Yeah, you can see something like this. So the page was not found. This is an example of that's an example of something they don't serve basically. So you need a reservation. That is 401. That means an unauthorized request. It is that you are trying to have access to something that you're not supposed to have access to. That kind of stuff. This happens a lot when it comes to Google Drive, because I've noticed this a lot in Google Drive. When I try to use my other email to have access to a particular drive, and it tells me no, you don't have access to this, and I have to go back to use my original email, though it's always a drag or something. So kitchen is closed is server error. That means it is not on your own end. The issue is on the service or the software on the company's hand basically. So the key principles from this analogy is that you cannot walk into the kitchen and have access to the database. I've mentioned this. You can only order from the menu. That means they've made it there. They've given you an API documentation that here are the things you can order. Here are the things available to you. And yes, the kitchen format is standardized. That means responses follow a defined structure. There's always a structure. I've mentioned this as well. And the different customers use the same kitchen. That is a website, a mobile app, make.com, and all use the same API. It's just very obvious. Now, the way the request to the response, for every API interaction you have is a request followed by a response. This is how it looks like. When you send in a request to this URL endpoint, you can actually send a request to this and it's going to give you something back. Now, how I do have this, there are several ways of requests for each service. The one for Notion is different from how the one for Airtable is. Let's quickly look for Airtable. What the hell did I just type? Airtable API documentation. Here's it. And let's look for the one for Notion. Notion API documentation. So we're going into the menus now, right? We want to see what's up. Okay. And the one for this should be this. Okay. So right here, you could see we're in the overview, right? You could see, let's see, API reference. All right. So you could see it here. This is a convention to it. This is the base URL to send all API requests is. So they have a way based on, their domain and everything. They have a way where this is how they get. This is how you can make requests to them. This is how you can tell them. So, and that is where to tell them, basically. So, using this method, there are several ways you could approach them and tell them to do something. And that way of approach is through various operations which are like get, post, patch, delete, request, and things that you do have them here as well. These are methods that you can use to approach them. An example is get. These gets might be different. It might be like, okay, when it comes to get, what you are trying to do is you are trying to fetch for something. You are trying to search for something that already exists there. What I mean is that when it comes to get, it's a different method. It's quite different from when you use put or when you use post or delete. And I'm very honest, in most cases, I've only used get and post. I've not used put and delete. I've not used put and delete. Or I doubt if I have ever used put, I've not used delete. I've not had to use delete. So, but or these four do exist. So right now we could see the one for Airtable as well. Let's see, this is the API reference. It's supposed to show us something. To see personalized documentation, login. Nah, I'm not logging in. Well, we can see the one for this, right? This is how it looks like. So you can see this HTTP API or airtable.com, blah, blah, blah. So that is it. They're just different. And that's based on their domain. You can use to request something from them. And the various requests are uploaded on this. The various requests could be get, post, put, delete, and the headers. You know what? I think to make this very, understandable, I would use this. Let us go into this. So we could click on add module, and I was hoping not to start with this, but I mean, we're getting into it now. So basically, there's a way we can use to like interact with this. There's a way we can ask for this. There's a method that we can use to ask for all this. And this method this process as a method, headers, body sometimes also, but it's required for post and put. Yes, I don't use that for get because get doesn't require, it doesn't need a body, but post does need a body. So the response contains, these are the status codes. Anytime you ask for something, basically, it responds to you based on, we serve that or we don't serve that. This is we don't serve that. We don't serve that is 404 or bad request that's 400. You can see every single one of them here. There's 200, there's 201. I'm going to explain what 200 is. 200 is basically success. And there's 429, which I believe I explained on day 24 what a 429 is. And it's also a 500 too. So I'm going to break every single thing down here. And now there's also header, that's the metadata about the response. These are the things that show up. Okay, I've deleted that. Let me get this guy off. He has done enough for us. So anyway, yeah, I was checking a couple of things, but don't worry about that. Anyway, so what we do have here is the metadata, yeah, the body, the actual body, almost always in JSON format, true. And all these things are just explaining the request to the response cycle, like what goes on, what method are we going to use, what are the status code as the response it gives once you ask for something. That is basically when we ask for a particular food, it tells us, yeah, we do have that, or no, we don't have that. Why do you ask for that? Or yeah, this is a bad request, man. You couldn't. Why did you ask that way? And various others as well. So this is just, what happens right in between and the thing you do to get your response back. So this is request. This is the response that you get. Just have that in mind. We're now going into the HTTP methods. The 4 verbs. Every API request uses one of these 4 methods. And that is the one I've been telling you guys all this while. The gets, posts, puts, delete. Yeah, so, and I already explained this a little bit in day 13, but now we can, put this very well. In day 13, I do remember when I was telling you guys, there are several ways to, when we have trigger modules, right? We also do have action modules. Those action modules are just quoted with, virtual designs like this. All this are just visual representation of the services. In real sense, these things that you are seeing, they are like structured to contain whatever API it is, but in a more easier way. This time around, you don't have something that is rough. Because the main aim of using this is to be no code. That means anyone that uses this should be able to use it without having to, build some complicated steps or have some complicated things inside. The way that is just what these modules are. When you break these things down, you see that at the end of the day, it's just like an HTTP method that's what are equivalent into what this. Now, an example of what I'm showing you here now is that there's a search database item that was for Notion, right? Let's just bring everything out so you guys get to see examples in real time. Since we're talking about Notion today, we're talking about Notion. I made mention of Notion here. Where did I make mention of Notion? Yeah, I did make mention of Notion here. And I said this is how it is, right? So we're going to be using Notion to work on a couple of things. So what we have here, we're going to be using this. It gets, this is your HTTP. You can just look for it right here. You can see this. Interesting. So we do have this all this while. Yes, we had it all this while. So there's a make requests. That's where you get to choose the method. You can see the methods here. And there's get, there's post. These are the ones that we're talking about. And we could also still go about everything, but we're not going to be using everything as an example, basically. So you can see them here. We do have them here, all here. So this is the get method. And you could connect using, no authentication means that you are just using the URL. You don't need to have access to it, but you can't do that using Notion. But there are some links, there are some URLs that are like that, and I'm going to walk you through as well. So basically, you can see there are different methods that we have here. We're going to explore them. It's going to be very interesting. Now, here is the body. If you do remember when I was talking about the body here, there's body is optional. This is the request contain. You can leave this out for now. We're not concerned with this for now. That's the response. What we're concerned about is just what? This is what we're concerned about. So this is us. We're only concerned about us now. We want to understand what we can ask for. Basically, we want to understand the menu and us first before we go into this guy and probably go into this guy and what is going to give us back or something. We're concerned about what are we going to ask for. What I mean here is that, do you like ice cream? Do you like jollof rice? Do you like pounded yam? Do you like pizza? What you're concerned about is the first thing we want to focus on. So yeah, so that's what we do have here. So every single thing for this, so you could see every single thing here, right? So this is an equivalent when I say gets. When I say gets, this HTTP method gets, what it does is it fetches data or reads the data. The equivalent is on Notion. For this gets, the equivalent is you type in, not supposed to connect. You type in, that's Notion search objects. This is equivalent to what? Get, right? The other one as well is post. Post is creating new record. From the name, you could already deduce what these things are doing. From the name, and the get is like, I'm trying to get something, right? I'm trying to look for something. I want to bring it in. So for posts, I want to put something out there. I want to create something. You get, so this is what? Equivalent to create a database. And that is post, right? Post here is equivalent to you are looking for Notion create. So you can see create base, create a page, create database, create data source, or whatever. So we do have a couple. Let's create database. So you can see create, right? So this post is equals to that. While put and patch is equals to something like update. So you're trying to what? Update something, right? So that is where you have these as well. Let's go in and update. Yes, update a page, update a database. You understand what I've been trying to say all this while, right? For those that don't understand, delete is equals to delete a record on Notion. So delete, when it comes to this, is equals to what you say. Let's say Notion delete. I've never used anything like, wait, I think I have. I have. Just remembered. I have used something like delete. Yes. So delete a page content. So yeah, it takes the ID and it deletes it, basically. So this is like when you're trying to remove someone, you're trying to remove a client from being as part of your, you can't use content ID though to delete. I believe that there should be a Let's just use this. Let's do this. Notion delete page. So did we only ever have just one delete? Delete a page content. Okay, I think we only ever had that then. So yeah, you do understand what I'm trying to say here. That is you deleting, right? So basically it gets requests typically have no body. You don't need to have that body to it. You don't need to tall. So this empty, just empty. So the URL itself, is what to fetch. That means here we do have this connected to notion.com right now, right? So this would say what to bring in. Because it's trying to look for something. We don't know. We only have the URL. That is, the URL is basically saying this is the specific thing I'm looking for. So you don't need to start specifying any other thing. Again, the post request includes a body with the data you are creating. In ring.com HTTP module, this is a request content or body field. So when it comes to the post, what this is saying is that this, you get to know, when it comes to the post, once you make this, you're going to what? You're going to like a body field or like a request content field. So you can specify what exactly you're trying to, or what you are trying to post. So you are like, okay, just see it this way. Your post request includes a body with the data you are creating. That is, you know exactly what you are going to add. Let me just use this for example. So let's use this for example. You can see when I clicked on JSON, it gave me more content. I can probably pull from a JSON string where I can include anything, I want the inside, whatever it is, or let's say this, and let's say name, you get just everything around that. So that is for this. We could have something else. This is basically specifying that I have multiple forms of data. This is when I want to upload like files. For example, files are not just text or they are not, in JSON format. So this is data structure. If I do have a data structure I've created already, there are just a lot of things basically. And to be honest, it's not hard. That's the thing. And I initially thought, having to walk around this, what is this? Like, what is this? Click on advanced setting and you might just lose it. But at one point, I just got to understand that these things are actually very simple. And there are some things you don't even need at all. You don't need them. You don't need to necessarily know them until you need them. That is what I believe. So you can see there are other types, there are other things that you could, the forms of data it could be. So here is one I've used as well. Content type value, content body, buffer. This is a text. So this is a text format and this is what? The buffer. So there are many things that you might likely, you don't even need to put in your head at all. The patch updates part of the record specific field. Put replaces the entire record. Most automation uses patch. So let's go in for patch. Let's go in for patch here. Nothing is going to change. I mean, we're not picking anything right from here, right? But this is what the format of this is mainly depending on the method that you are going to call for is what you have for patch. So basically all these are just big words for now, but I believe we are going to build this together so you get to understand. Once again, I had no idea of how to use all these things. They were foreign to me and I just believed that, okay, I think at this point I need to be a developer. I need to learn. I need to understand JSON. I mean, I thought I really needed to understand JSON. Let me show you guys something real quick. So when you search for who is JSON, yeah, our next joke. Let's type this first. So who is JSON? I mean, you see, this is not a person. Anyway, the joke I wanted to show you guys was this. Who is JSON? And let's look at the image. I saw this was on X. That was a few days ago. I think about 3 days ago. Yeah, 3 days ago. This is it. Who is JSON? So, I mean, I was actually curious, like, how do I understand this code and everything? Then it was until one point I actually discovered that. So, when you try to understand what JSON itself is, JSON is like, it was derived from, I think, from JavaScript itself. I think these JavaScript are objects something, and it's like a plain language, it's a plain text format that it's being used across, every programming language to transfer data. Basically, that is what this JSON stuff is all about. So anyway, that aside, let's go into status codes. So status codes and what they mean in practice. You would have seen them in make.com. I mean, the example I keep showing you, I've been showing you this for quite a while now. This is 403.
I tried to spread it, but it did not spread. I mean, I tried to open it, it did not open. God, what the hell am I saying? I tried to, oh my God, I just keep my mouth shut.
So when you look at the status codes, you've seen this in make.com, the execution log, and now you get to understand them. So yes, I've been saying this. 200 means okay. When you request for something and that request succeeds, that means, yeah, they've listened to it. If you ask for this and the API sends it to the kitchen and the kitchen says, all right, this is good, you get, so that is where it says okay.
It's going to send a response back to you that, yeah, sure. An example of this is
if you make a connection on like a webhook, for example. Let's quickly do something like this. So I believe this should work, right? Let's go for a webhook. So some webhook. Let's do this real quick. We have the one for support tickets, but okay, let's just copy and paste. Check this out.
Webhook is no longer active. Sorry, let us change that. Maybe we can
add a new webhook. Test webhook. Test web.
Web. Right. So we do have this new one, and you can copy this, cancel this out, and paste this right here.
And it says accepted. This is basically saying, okay, I've connected, or you've confirmed me, right? Yeah, sure, I'm here. So this is just still saying okay, and that's the response we get. So when it comes to 201, it means you created a record. What this means here is when you use the post and you eventually get some things created somewhere, that is you seeing 201. That is a record has been created basically. So that's 201. If you see I don't think you're going to see 200 or 201. You just see that something has gone through. That is it. However, you see all this because these ones make themselves known.
400 is bad request. That means probably there was an issue, probably from the format, the way you asked for it. The way you asked for it was, probably it had some, issue there.
So that is where you get to see. That is where you get to see the bad request. That's 400. While 401 is unauthorized. That means that the API key you're trying to connect to is not correct
or probably has expired, something like that. That is when this unauthorized comes in. So you might have to reconnect. In this case, when it comes to OAuth is, just authenticating directly to, rather than having to use API key. So they're both basically the same thing, but OAuth just makes it easier and faster most of the cases.
So 401 is forbidden. That means authenticated but not permitted. You don't have permission to have access to that particular data or to request for that data. You don't have permission to do it. Though you are able to come in, you do not have permission. This is an example of when I use a restaurant now, I would say this is an example of having a VIP. There's a VIP aspect, but there's someone that pays for a membership somewhere, and this person has access to, some certain benefits, but you don't. So I believe this is the time for you to upgrade your membership card to platinum. So the next one is 404. That is not found. That means whatever you are looking for does not even exist. What exactly are you looking for? I mean, that is 404. It basically is telling you, you should check the URL.
An example is what I did the other time when I used Tally. Which one did I use? I used this, and I asked for, okay, let us do this again.
But those that went with us, this is going to work because there's a form like this, right? There's something like this. But imagine if you do this. Let's try to do this. This is not found. So you can see this is an error 404. It's basically there's nothing like that exists on their server. So please go back and check again. So that's where we say what to do. This that you have here, what to do. Like
what should you do when you encounter these errors? So 422 is unprocessable entity. That means whatever you have, whatever you've requested for, the way you requested for it was correct, but we can't, we can't still, it's, I would have said that is similar to this because I saw this exact pin online. That was why I pumped it in. I had no idea there was a 422 initially. I feel like, okay, it says here, check field values, the types and required field. I've not come across 422 before. Probably I skipped it or something. But it is almost similar to what we do have here. Oh, so what do we do have here? So the 429 is too many requests. This is rate limit. You eating the rate limit. I think I explained this in, that is our day 24 when I was explaining, all the stuff about this eating rate limit on your API keys and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that is what we have here. Okay. So that was where I explained rate limit and every single thing here. And I used the example of the things I've used, the APIs I've used in the past, the API keys I've used in the past, and, the limits behind it. This is rate per limit. This is also, this is token per minute rather. Here's the amount of token this can process in a minute. And this is quite huge. A million per minute. That is quite huge, to be honest. That's quite huge. Anyway, you do understand now. Whenever you see a 500, just know it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It is the fault of the service. Probably they have an issue somewhere. There's something that is going on. So yeah. So the next thing we're going to try now, what we're going to do together, this is going to be very fun. We're going to use real API calls that we can make right now. We're going to call them and we're going to get a response back. We're going to call them in two ways. I believe we should be able to call this. I saw this online and I believe we should be able to call this on web and also using the HTTP method. So this is all, these are all gets, because when you see something, I'm literally saying returns. This is also returns. That means I'm trying to get something. I'm not trying to post something. So I want us to, use this. Yeah, I already made it here. Public get request. So no authentication needed. That means no authentication needed. There are some cases where you need authentication. That's where you need the API key. You add the API key here. You add it here. You create the whatever. You add API key parameter name. You can, in most cases, the ones I've used, because I remember when I was trying to connect to X, when I had access to this developer or whatever, until now that you have to pay for it. So there's X API key, whatever it is. And you have to take the API key, add it here. So that is how you had your API key or something. There is OAuth2. This one will require you to create a connection to whatever you're trying to connect it to. And this one is a basic auth, which this one also requires you to just add a username and password. I remember using this for my WordPress blog. At the end of the day, I just realized that I was limited in that WordPress blog back then because I couldn't pay for it then. So there was a limit to how much or what I could do. But I'll be very honest, this is not too safe. I mean, we'll go into this, but this is not too safe because it's almost like your password and username right there in the open. So though you might have no choice at one point to build something like this, I won't say you should build this for a client. Don't build this for a client. I would still go, I'll prefer you going for something like this for a client, create a connection, make it safe and everything. Well, if you have something like this could be a very big issue if you use this for very important matters. So what we do have here for URL, we've added this, but I believe we have a new one. The JSON placeholder, we don't need any authentication here. So, and what we need is a get, and we don't need anything here as well. Just empty pagination type. Do we? No, we don't. So what we're going to do now, save that. Let's quickly use this. Zoom out. Give this guy. We call this guy alone. And run this module. Contains error. Guess what? Wait, body could not blah blah blah. Nigga, save this. Thank you. If you do remember what I told you guys about having to close that drop down so it could be empty, that is an example. So what we have here, you could see it went through. We asked for something. We had to get
we went to search for it and get this thing. Status code is 200 here. As you guys can see, that means, what does 200 mean again? If you remember, okay, so the request was what? Successful. So we have our status code here and our data here. You can see our data. It's a lot. And yeah, you can see. So this is actually not hard. It's very easy to work across. So what we have here is just, let's see the data. You can see these are names, and emails. Where are we getting this from exactly? I know you'll be curious now, because all we did was this. So this, what I put together here, I saw this online. These are fake users. So it's just for testing. It is for the developer testing API. And even I want to be using this now, because I figured out, wow, this looks very interesting. So this is just fake users. So if you want to use this to process any lead, for example, let's assume that what you were doing, you could connect this to, whatever you have here and process it and just, have a bunch of fake users, rather than me having to use Danny or Daniel that I was using the other time. I've abused Daniel a lot. It's crazy. So I could have just used this instead. I had no idea there was like fake users and all. So yeah, that is it. So this is quite interesting, because you could also do the same thing on your web browser as well. Let's paste this in our web browser and you see them, but the method you will see it, the format rather, you see it. You can see this is the output. The format we are seeing here is in what? JSON. That is the format we are seeing here. And unlike the way it looked like here, which it was appeasing, it looked okay here, right? This is why I mentioned the fact that using make.com, using this HTTP module on make.com just made it more appealing to look like. It arranged it because make.com works using this stuff, basically is returning everything in JSON. The entire input and output is all in JSON. This is how it looks like. Honestly, it looks bad, but you just need to dress it up using make.com, internal, visual, whatever. And that's why we have this here. So you see this. These are fake people. I wanted to say people. The person's company. You see, it even added this. Crazy. Oh my God. With an ad. It's an address. Is this website real? Let's check out this website. Nah.info. Alright, it's fake. All.org. Wow. So anyway, so we don't, take too much time there. You could play around with all this. These are very, very, very nice. Let us see this. You could check this out. Let's see this. This will be the last one we check. So there's a public IP address checker. We'll check that as well. A lot of you probably want to check my address now. We're going to look at it together. So don't worry. We're going to actually look at it together. I'm curious as well. So let's save that. Let's run that. So what this did, this dog thingy, is meant to release a data, and it is going to give us an image of a random dog. That is what this does. So let's see. We're going to paste the same thing here on browser. And why? Because I want to see if it's returning the same. Image every single time. But it says random, right? But I want to see if it's returning the same image. So what we have here is an image, right? We've done this. We ran this. And we have another one here. So let us try this out. Let's try this. This is JPEG, and we have this. Hey, okay, wow, cute. Okay, let's check this guy out as well. Okay, cute as well. This is nice. So, you guys can try this. So the next one is there's this International Space Station location. It gets updated every single second. You can also check this. You can see their location. Basically, you get to see their location, but it changes because it's basically moving around, I guess. So let's look for what the International Space whatever is. You can see, so it's moving around, right? And it's a multinational modular space laboratory in low Earth orbital. Okay. Well, this is fun for those that love space stuff. I like it too, but nah, we're not really dealing with that. So what we're going to work on is our IP checker. This is very serious. You guys are finally going to see where I live. You guys are going to see where I live. Comes this out. Okay. So let's paste that in. But before we do that, let's use
our K. Thank you. We have a VPN, and let's paste this in. I hope it doesn't work. Yeah, it's not working. I mean, like the VPN is working. So this is the VPN's location. All right, this is good. So what is actually going to do? This will not show your full IP. To be very honest, it's not going to show the full IP. I mean, this is not your full IP. This is not your immediate, like your address itself. What this is returning is, this is returning your, what this is showing is your internet service provider. It's showing your internet service provider, your country, and the region you are. This is basically what this is showing. So your internet service provider, your country, and the region you are, the region or the state you are, or wherever. This is what this is showing. But still not going to show it.
I'm not going to show it. Should I reload? No, let's not reload. I mean, no one is going to do harm.
Anyway, yeah, so that's what we have here. And this has been fun. So anyway, let's go to a more break. Let's break some things down. So why every modern has an API, basically, why they have things like this is because modern softwares are built in independent layers. These are several layers. This is not the
5 layers of AI, mind you.
But I discovered that these were actually the ways that the new apps are being built now, or well, modern apps rather are being built. The one we saw or the one we see every single time. So this is the database. This is the server side. This is all in the server side. This is literally the kitchen you get. So the backend server, the processing logic and everything, this is the layer 2, still around here as well. And the API exposes the data and functions safely. That means there are some things that are particular to this that should not be in the public. But this API says, don't worry, I'll be the intermediary between them, and I'm going to talk more like Jesus. So I'm going to, listen, give it back, and give them an answer or something. So yeah, while the layer 4A, B, C, D, whatever it is these are just like, what I mean is this layer 4 can be your web browser. That is your web browser, asking for this. What I said here is the front end API, calls API to show you the website. What this is doing is basically like this tally itself. This is it. This is an example. The B is your phone. Where's my phone? So it shows you the app as well. It calls it. So anytime you open an app, you think it's something that was already there. No, it has to call it every single time. Though there are some ways that you might be asking that, how do you now use some apps without internet, right? So how do you still see them? They get saved on your device. I think they get cached on your device, so you're able to still see your data and everything. Most of these things, this is why it takes your storage, because it uses that as a temporary storage, as a temporary location. But if you want to receive real life data or anything, you need to switch on the internet for it to call in what exactly is supposed to show at that time. So the third one is make.com's module, what I literally showed you guys, all this. And I mean all this. This that's just an example. This is the way we can interact with it. This is literally the customer. This is the API, which is the waiter, and this is the backend. So you need to know these things, because in the future we're definitely going to do this thing. We're going to work around this. It's not hard.
I don't think I've really needed to code for a couple of years now. From 2021 or 2022.
That was when I really, 2023, 2024, I still had to
work on school-related stuff, that's Java, C++, and a couple. But to be honest, I've not touched any all this while. So
you don't just need to worry about anything code or anything. I'm not teaching anything code, but there's a way we interact with it that still makes it interesting. So yeah, that is why they have all this, because they need to show something on the front end. They need to show you something, and the way to only show you is what? Through this right in the middle, the layer 3. And crazy enough, we are dealing with layer 3 in API as well. So now the Notion websites, every single thing here is basically what I explained, all called the same Notion API. If I keep using this, if what I've used was this, I used an example, right? But if what I've used was this, what we've been seeing all these are databases, blah, blah, blah. Let's try to test run this and see what it brings up. I'm very honest, it's not going to bring something like really this thing out, because no authentication, and we actually need authentication. you guys know that whenever we want to connect our Notion, we always needed a token or some sort of API key or something, right? Though I will not call it an API key, but it's some sort of API key. You guys will understand the difference between API keys, webhooks, all these tokens and the rest. I'm going to make a video on that. I'll explain that as well. So yeah, I mean, when you look at that, you obviously know that you need an authentication of some sort, which is not your basic authentication. So you probably be using this or using this, either of the two. Well, let's just try it. Let me show you guys what will happen when I try it. So you guys will see, give us an error, unauthorized. This is what? This is 401. And like I said, honestly, you guys don't have access to it. Why? Because there's no key. You did not put anything. Unauthorized authentication field, check API key or reconnect or what? That was literally what I explained to you guys. You guys can see that. So you just requested for something random, but you do one thing, you did not even specify what you needed. An example is that I just put in databases. I did not put in, if I put databases slash, for example, and this is our database here, right? And I put something like, if I'd used this instead, if I'd used this entire thing instead, it will still ask me, what the fuck is wrong with you? To still ask me, what the hell is wrong with you? Because it's like, how come? So let's run this again. Still going to give us an error. Why? Because what? 400 this time around. That is showing you guys that what? Bad request. I think I made a mistake somewhere. She should be. This is not a database actually. This is not a database. Let me remove this off and let's see if I need to add the P. Or I need to remove the. You want let me just remove the P. Let's just remove the P and save. And let's run this. To still give us an error. To be honest, still give us an error. But still 400. Okay. /P and save. And we know if we are going to remove everything entirely. I mean, this is not still going to work, but I'm trying to see if the error is going to change. 400 as well. We're still using a new valid request. Let's get this off. When we look at, should we go to the API documentation itself? This would be a lot. Still the same. So I've been asking it the wrong way, basically. We're going to work on this. So when you explain this error, you guys will see, basically, we're not asking the right format. Yeah, we're not asking the right format, and that's what's going on. So we're going to work on it. I'm going to show you guys around how to use that effectively. So what we do have here is just, yeah. So if we use the same API on Notion, I mean, I have Notion on my phone, I have Notion on my PC, on my desktop. I have Notion on my desktop. I have Notion on my phone. I have Notion on web as well. So either one is still the same kitchen, it's still the same server. I'm still reaching out to the same place, though I'm using different formats or different, not method now, I'm using different gadgets, different devices to reach out. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So that means if an app has a modern website or mobile interface, it's almost certainly has an API. So anything out there has an API, almost certain that they do have an API. So the question is whether it's public or private. So yes, true. There's public, there's private, and whether it requires authentication. The ones that I use as example up here did not require authentication of any sort. That's why we were able to access them, because they're out there in the open for anyone to see. And I've seen a couple of things like this. I think there's even one authentication API odds for dummies, Rick and Morty, e-commerce. This was one of the first projects I did to test make.com and know what's up e-commerce product or something. There's even the one for Star Wars. Oh, e-commerce, yes. Characters. There's something like that. Yes, it exists, and this is it. This is the dummy JSON authentication API. I saw this. This was one of the things I actually did long ago, and it was fun. I used this to understand make.com. This was one of the things I used to understand make.com. I built a couple of things there. I also got the one for Star Wars as well. Star Wars, the character. Star Wars product. This was products. This was me just being curious, right? Yes, that is a swappy. So this was what I used as well. So, I mean, when you are trying to explore things, you need to have fun while doing it too. So that was what I did.
So yes, you can see it just depends on it is if it is private or public, right? And the thing I'm going to address when it comes to it being private or public, and what we're going to focus on in this layer 3, is that there's something which we normally say, that's REST API, REST API. I say it a lot. I'm just going to mention it in the classes that we're going to talk about very soon. And it's a dominant style for modern web APIs because the characteristic is having URL-based endpoints, HTTP method, JSON responses, and what all this is about is this. Let me bring back the Notion API documentation. All we have here is we have an overview, we have a quick start. Let's go to quick start. So what we have here, when you check Notion, when you check this particular page, what exactly am I looking for? HTTP response and URL base point. Yes, I am looking for this. And all this is just showing me. I'm trying to do they have this personal access token in our to just show me now. So something like this, just let me just use something as this for example. This is not exactly what you're going to talk about, but trying to look for, you're just supposed to have this. Let's see if I can find exactly what I'm looking for. Something like this, just imagine something like this, something as long as this. All these other characters that you are seeing, which is like the pages, the blah blah blah, the, everything here, everything you see here is just telling you what there's an endpoint, there's somewhere you're going to, there's a method you get it, but it is more detailed than what you see here. What you see here is like packed already, like it looks good, but that one is like just a bunch of things connected slash together and everything. So I can't really remember how I even used to view it, but I think it just looks something similar to this. So yeah, that is when it comes to all this, we're going to understand it, but I just want you to have this in mind. These are the methods where we used to connect, where we used to have access, we used to call some of these, APIs. So there are just several styles, basically. So this REST, there's Grapher, there's SOAP. I don't know how it's being called. I've not called it. I saw it online, so I decided to add it here. And there's a webhook, which I'm most familiar with. Not a request type, but an event-driven pattern. Yep. So for layer 3, we can assume REST unless the document says otherwise. Anytime you're working on anything, you can assume it is REST unless they are being specific on it being otherwise. An example of them being specific was when we opened the one for Rick and Morty here, you can see what it says here. Okay, it's a REST and, so it's both sides then. So you could use a REST and this. It's nothing much. I don't think there's much difference. I don't really interact with others much, and all I do is I just check online and I confirm which API, the way the structure looks like, and I just work on it. That is what I do. So I'll also explain this way. So like I said, you don't have to be a developer to understand all these things. They are very simple. You need to enjoy doing it. You get to understand. So before tomorrow and before the next video, I want you to make these calls. I've literally added them here, so it's basically the same thing, but I'm giving you the tasks to do. So make these calls. Have fun doing that. We'll go to your make.com and do that there as well. We're in for a ride in layer 3 and it's going to be enjoyable. If you have any questions so far on these or previous layers, you can ask in the comments and I'll be looking forward to answering you guys. All right, have fun.